Hello and welcome to Newsnight. On Palm Sunday, Nigerians were once again shaken by tragedy. The Angwan Rukuba community in Jos North local government area of Plateau State was the scene of a deadly attack. Another addition to the long and painful list of assaults that have scarred different parts of our country. Beyond the statistics of death and destruction, one image lingered. That of a grieving mother clutching the lifeless body of her only son. A heartbreaking reminder of the human cost of insecurity. Tonight, we sit down with Dr. Kabiru Adamu, a respected security risk management and intelligence expert, to examine the challenges Nigerians continue to face and to explore the factors that may be undermining the country's efforts to stem the tide of violence and restore peace. Dr. Adamu, thank you for being our guest today on Newsnight.
Thank you for having me.
I would like us to go straight into it. The issue of security has become an issue that we've been trying to deal with for over 15 years. When you, from where you sit, look at the security challenge facing Nigeria, what is the picture that you see?
So I would answer your question from two angles. From the angle of the security challenges themselves, and then from the angle of what government has put in place to address the security challenges. And for the security challenges, we've kind of grouped them into four subgroups. The political drivers, and by this we mean those political issues that drive insecurity in Nigeria. As an example, marginalization and the perception of marginalization. Land governance, when government at the federal and state level churn out land governance policies, and then it kind of isolates certain members of the society and how they respond to that. Then the next sort of subgroup is the socio-economic conditions, and embedded in that are issues around poverty, unemployment, access to capital, name them. If you look at 36 states of the Federation, there is a variation in terms of the poverty level, the unemployment level. Likewise, if you look at the profile in our population, youths as an example, the large number of youth, especially in the northern part of the country, that have not been educated, that have no access, no skill sets, they are unemployed. Now, the listener may be wondering, why is this related to security? It is. The non-state actors who are looking for a pool to recruit from, that's where they recruit from. And the more, for instance, especially in this administration, because of some of the reform policies that the administration has introduced, the removal of subsidy, the alignment of the exchange rate, and all of that, what that has done is that increased the poverty level. And so it's now more difficult for people to fend and provide those basic needs of life, food, clothing, and shelter. And so incentivizing them by these criminal actors is easier. In the Northwest, as an example, you've got these bandit groups. They need fuel for their motorcycles. If government takes more measures through policies to deny them that fuel, there will be an available number of people, because of the socio-economic conditions, to get small money profit from it. They can put that petrol, as it were, in cellophane bags and then take it over to them. And of course, you've seen security forces arresting people in that regard. So that's the relationship with that. Let's quickly move to the environmental factors. The receding of the Lake Chad in the Northwest. This is well documented, how it has affected livelihood. And of course, as a result of the consequences of that impact, we've seen how the conflict dynamics in that part of Nigeria has increased. If you go to the Northwest, desertification and its consequences on farming, as well as on herding. We've seen how the movement of herders down into the southern part of the country, and farmers too, to an extent, the desire for land by both parties, how it's now affecting that conflict dynamic. So climate change and the inability of government to address the consequences of climate change is also a huge driver. And then, of course, I spoke about the security challenge itself, the structural challenges within the security sector. And this is well documented. If you pick any one of the security organizations, you find out issues around corruption, sometimes lack of delineation of their mandate, equipment deficit, training, challenges. So many factors, even manpower challenges. So those are, I think, in a nutshell, some of the drivers and reasons for the security challenge. Now, what are the security challenges themselves? a multitude of non-state actors that are challenging the supremacy of the use of force by the state. There is no part of the country that you will not find this multitude of non-state actors called by different names. If you go to the Northeast, they are terrorists. At the moment, if you look at our laws, there are 7 terrorist groups identified by the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act. A lot of them are in the Northwest. I will just mention 3 of them: the Jamaat al-Ahl Sunnah al-Dawati wal-Jihad and the Islamic State in West Africa province, commonly called Boko Haram. But you also have the Ansaru group, which is another faction that is embedded in that. If you move to the Northwest, you also have the Lakurawas. And then more recently in the North Central, you have Jenim, which is more in the Sahel, claiming an attack there. You also have the Darul Salam, and then you have the Mahmudawas, about 3 of them embedded in the North Central.
Is that those operating in Kwara?
In Kwara, Niger axis.
Okay.
But then if you move away from there, you go to the south, you have militant groups, you have groups that are either engaged in some violent criminality, interested in resources, or some other criminal activities. Same thing in the southwest as well as the southeast. Southeast, I need to speak also about the secessionist group, especially the indigenous people of Biafra and their affiliated groups. So those are some of the groups that are active. I've not talked about cult groups. I've not talked about ethnic militias. There is no part of the country that you go that you don't find some elements of ethnic militia in one form or the other. Now, this is the poly-crisis that is affecting Nigeria at the moment. Now let's move to...
Wait, before you move, those 2 groups you mentioned, they don't come up most of the time.
Yeah, which ones?
The cults and the ethno...
Well, we monitor them in Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited. They are active almost on a daily basis. You hear the EA and the IA cult groups. They are always in one or the other tough wars. And sadly, their activities are increasing over the last few years. In fact, after the 2023 election, we've seen an increase in their activities. We do document almost on a daily basis. In places that will shock you. Benue State, as an example, that someone will be surprised. Are there cult groups? Yes, there are, especially in urban areas. And again, from time to time, they engage in tough wars. Edo State, well documented. BBC, in fact, did an investigative report that anyone interested should go, and it's right there on YouTube. Go listen to it and see the depth and how the extent of reach. Some of these groups have affiliations with groups outside Nigeria. So that's how far they've gone to. And again, like I said, we document their activities. So they are an important element in terms of the threat factors that exist within.
When you now talk of the what did you call
militia,
it? Militia. Are these also possible, some of the things we now call community clashes?
Yes, when you hear inter-community clashes, sometimes it is by these ethnic militias. And what will shock you, Larry, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, and based on research, and we've done research, we found out that there are communities that are actually contributing money and using this money to support, first, access to weapons by these ethnic militias, and then the scary one is to exact influence. So let's say there is an inter-community violence between 2 groups. I won't mention any of the common one, but we all know that there are some common ones. And then the security, police or military arrest some suspects. Now that money will be used to exact influence so that bail is granted to the members of that community. It's that bad. What point I'm making is that it has become institutionalized. It's not just something that occurs randomly. It is because of the absence of justice, which is something I didn't mention as a cause, of the security challenges we have. Communities now are fending justice, quote unquote, and protection for themselves using this ethnic militia.
When you say justice, you mean where a crime is committed, and the state
punishment,
the state does not take action.
Exactly, the inability of the state to deliver justice in different forms.
They will feel
fulfilled that they've been treated fairly.
Yes.
Has now created the need first for protection and then secondly to exact influence, as the case may be. So I think it's also important to mention that as a cause of the security challenges.
I would like us to, take some of these issues. I'd like the way you've broken them down across the country, because they will tell you once you can diagnose what the problem is, you go a little way to understand it better and then look for a solution. So if we start from the Northeast was where it seems we had an organized problem for security in this country. That was about 15 years ago. It's lasted this long. And a lot of people are asking, is it that, what makes that a problem we cannot handle?
So I guess before I answer your question, let me go to the second part of your initial question. Yes. I said there is a security challenge, and then there is the what government has put in place to address the security challenge. It would lead me into the answer to your second question. Now, in terms of what government has in place to address the security challenge, I would describe it as the national security apparatus. All the arrangements that come together to address the national security challenge. I think it's important for the average Nigerian to remember that the Constitution is very clear about the primary responsibility for government as contained in Section 14, subsection 2 of the Constitution. But before that, the Constitution reminded us that the sovereignty, which is Section 14, subsection 1 of the Constitution, lies in the people. In other words, we are the one that should decide how we want the direction of this national security apparatus. It wasn't by mistake that it started with reminding us that sovereignty lies with us, and then in Section 14, subsection 2, it went to say the primary responsibility of government is to protect lives and property of the law-abiding Nigerian. Now, what government has put in place is this national security apparatus, which contains, in the first place, about 42 organizations, about 27, 28, 29, they're about primarily responsible for security. So those are the direct ones that are responsible for security. As an example, the Defense Headquarters, the three services, and you can include DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, and then of course the intelligence community, SSS, NIA, and then you go to the paramilitary ones, the police, the Nigerian Immigration Service, the civil defense, name them. If you count them, they will reach about 27. But then you have to extend it, because when it comes to administration of criminal justice, there are others that also play that role. Most of them either in the justice sector or some of them within the presidency. So as an example, you have the Ministry of Justice and its supporting agencies, the NFIU as an example, the NDLEA, ICPC, EFCC, name them. So if you count them, all of them, they come to about 42. Those are the direct and the associated ones. But then when you also expand it, especially if you are discussing now human security, you find out that there are other ones that are also responsible. Now, that's the first layer. The second layer are the instruments and the laws that are now providing the basis for these organizations to carry out their functions. So we start from the top, which is the National Security Strategy. You now have the National Defense Policy, the National Counterterrorism Strategy, name them. And then the various laws that we have. I give example of the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act. All of these instruments you bring together, they are the second layer. Supporting that are the councils that we have that are now responsible for security. The National Security Council, the National Defense Council, the National Police Council, and the several others. And then the third layer, which is also absolutely important, are the partnerships that we've established as a member of the community of nations, both domestic and international partnerships. So when President Tinubu goes to the US, when he goes to Paris, goes to Turkey, and all of that. So if you're looking at national security, this apparatus is what you should now pick one after the other to evaluate, to see, are we functioning very well in terms of the ability of this apparatus to provide Section 14, subsection 2 of the Constitution. And the beauty of what has been laid out by our forebearers is that no one out of these three layers is more important than the other. You can't isolate. So as an example, if a policeman comes to detain me, the first thing I'll ask him is, what have I done wrong? What is your basis?
On what ground are you?
On what ground? It takes us to layer 2, his mandate.
Yes.
If he doesn't have that mandate, I can challenge him. But the moment he tells me, I've got a court warrant, I have to keep quiet. So or he shows me his ID card.
Yes.
So why I started with this is that it's very important for us to appreciate the provisions of the Constitution and to ask ourselves, at the moment, are we looking at security from these three layers? Or is our focus, thirdly, and this is where we are looking at security as a primary responsibility of the Defense Headquarters, the military. You rarely hear even our policy makers discussing security in the manner that I've just described. Most times it would be
just focus on
the military, the role of the military. And that is a misnomer. No country, and I repeat, security has one pathway.
But
not several pathways. You have to look at it from that prism of all of these three layers feeding into section 14, subsection 2 of the Constitution. If you focus on one layer, even if today we're going to the entire budget, which is about 56 trillion, take it and give it to the 42 agencies, and you don't improve on layer 1 and layer 2. In other words, you don't look at those instruments that are supposed to give them the powers to act. You don't look at the challenges, the consuls that I've mentioned. Under President Buhari, late President Buhari, his administration and this administration, Larry, we can count the number of times that the National Security Council has sat. We can count the number of times that the Defense Council has sat. Something is wrong.
Sometimes over a year.
Exactly. We can't run the national security apparatus in that manner. It was never meant to be like that.
I even want to ask, between the time we've talked that we've had this security issues, challenges, has this architecture been looked at to...
Not to my knowledge. You hear conversations around security sector reform, but not in this holistic manner. And I'm of the view that before you even put forward solutions or recommendations for security sector reform, ask yourself, are you implementing what you already have in place? I mean, we're living witnesses. I just gave you the example of the National Security Council. It's not been sitting. So you cannot even blame. Let's remember, I'm not one to put the blame on the shoulder of our this security organization that I've mentioned, because frankly, if you look at the military, they are doing more than their mandate allows them to do. The burden that we've placed on them, it's impossible for them to meet those challenges. So we need to sit back as a country to say, okay, why are we doing that? Why only the military? If you look at part of the challenges when we're discussing the security challenges is our porosity of our borders, which is an environmental factor. Now, if you look at the mandate of the 42, the military has very little to do with border protection. There are other organizations that have that responsibility, but when we're having the conversation, it's very rare for you to hear the mention of those organizations. So that is part of the challenge.
And even when we've been having the problem, we appreciate that some of the actors come through these non-existent borders. We've still not
everybody knows that. The current Minister of Defense, when he was CDS, and even now that he's Minister, he repeats that constantly.
And yet we've not looped them in.
So that's my point. I said casually that security has only one pathway.
Yes.
Now, what do I mean by that? All of this, the national security apparatus is supposed to work together in synergy to achieve Section 14, subsection 2 of the Constitution. And if you look at where the systems are working, such as the United States, I have this T-shirt that says, security never takes a day off. Now, it sounds like a cliche, but it's real. In real terms, in active security, all of these 42 organizations are supposed to work in tandem to achieve Section 14, subsection 2 of the Constitution. That means, for instance, we should, out of the 8,000, I think about 900 wards that we have, I want a situation where we can have a dashboard, the same way you and I are seated here, in the Office of the National Security Advisor, in the Office of the Minister of Defense, in the Office of the Minister of Interior, in the Office of the Minister of Police Affairs. He has a dashboard where he can see the 8,900 wards that we have in Nigeria, and where if there is an emergence of a threat, a red light comes show up. And the beauty of that is that we should be able to measure within minutes. What standard security practice says is that within 7 minutes, we must be able to respond to that red light. If we don't achieve that through unison between these 42 agencies, then we would never achieve national security. This is not rocket science, Larry. It's very simple. We can simulate it, we can trial it. In today's world, as small as my organization is, we've been able to create something like that. We have a granular board that can show the 774 local governments that we have. We can develop that, escalate it to show those 8,000 wards, so that we have that ability. Technology today would allow us to do that.
And if we had such a board, we could see where the movement, easily predict where the movement...
So there are 6 layers to this security. I mean, I'm also mindful this is a public space.
Yes, so we're trying not to...
Yeah, not to say too much. There are 6 layers to this. I just spoke about 2 of the layers, the layer to detect and then the layer to respond. Now, embedded in those layers are the other 4. which I wouldn't want to speak too much about. But then it has to be a whole of government and a whole of society approach. All of these 42 agencies that I spoke about should be able to work together to achieve the primary objective.
And clearly, with 15 years of this sort of challenges, a lot which has even evolved during this time, we seem not to be able to get our acts together from the policy point of view to address this.
I agree totally, and it's for the simple reason that I think there is no appreciation of the concept of national security. A lot of times we look at security from the prism.
How can we not have a concept?
I use the word appreciation.
No, even that, I'm asking myself, with the number of security people we have, the number of trainings we do in country, out country, we still cannot, we've lost men and material. Just as you said, the budget over the last 4 or 5 years, security has taken a large chunk.
A large chunk. From less than 1 trillion naira, today we're talking about 6 trillion naira.
Yeah. And each time it's the single sector.
It takes us to the primary reason, really, why we're where we are, lack of accountability within the security sector. The security sector has largely become a conduit for siphoning public funds. I say this with all sense of responsibility. Yes, it needs money, no doubt. We can't run away from that. It needs money, but a political economy has developed within the sector that now allows it. And anyone who doubts me, ask yourself, the security vote that goes to the governors, I think it was on your station that Daniel Bwala broke the egg when for the first time in a very long time he revealed how much our governors are getting. Now, at what point has anyone attempted to do an audit of what the governors do with that money? Then at the federal level, again, this is a public space, I don't want to say too much, but there is no accountability. And accountability can be looked at from two major angles: the operational accountability and then the financial accountability. Operational accountability, Plateau State. You asked me about Operation Hadinka in the Northeast. Yes. We can tie it with all the operations that are ongoing by the military at the moment. Funds are being released. But Larry, who measures the performance of those operations? They are meant to be stopgap operations, because those 42 organizations should ordinarily be able to deal with the challenge. They were not able to deal with it. We now put forward special operations with the hope that they will be able to contain the challenge in a very short time and then hand over back to the mainstream security organizations. We've got operations that are almost 20 years now. And for some of them, if you do an audit, the amounts of money that has been put into them are running into trillions of naira. And the third part, Larry, there is no end time, no exit strategy, no sunset clause on when these operations will end. So the political economy that I was speaking about, but that's just one sector of within that security sector. If you look at all the other sectors, this is the challenge that we have. So if we're going to move forward, we must enhance accountability, both financial and operational accountability.
Time to take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back from that short break. Now, I want to, because time is not on my side, I'm going to try and see if we can move a little bit quickly. The issue, we've tried to touch some of the issue in the Northeast. Now, the issue for the North Central, Northwest, banditry is one key issue. And a lot of people ask, with the NIN registration, with the technology we have right now, why is this kidnap industry still seeming to thrive?
Yeah, because we've not, in very cogent ways, attempted to address the issue. Earlier on, we talked about the judiciary and the inability to punish offenders.
Yes.
We've not done very well in that regard. These guys are still able to collect the proceeds of their crime and spend it. And not only spend it, display it in flagrant, exactly, use the right word, they flaunt it. Now, part of the challenge is this very abysmal effort in national identity registration. And this is not in any way blaming any one institution. I think this administration did very well in moving NIMC to Ministry of Interior. It's the right move. But then I think the organization itself has been a little bit slow in mapping our vulnerabilities and then making sure that in their effort to enhance the coverage,
Yes.
they actually address the vulnerabilities. I'll give you an example. If the general belief is that a certain ethnic group in Nigeria is mainly involved in banditry, why shouldn't we as a nation, as an example, focus on making sure that that particular ethnic group is captured in the registration process? And it will shock you, Larry, as far as I know, and based on my investigation, there is no any direct intentional effort by that organization to focus on that group. So we say that the group has elements that come from across West Africa into Nigeria, but yet we are not doing anything to make sure the ones that are Nigerians are identified by us. So I think this is part of the challenge. Secondly, everybody knows in today's world, data is your most influential currency.
Yes.
And yet we are not making use of that currency. So I think these are some part of the challenges.
We also have, a lot of people will be like, how is it that you have people going on social apps and basically making, they've become like influencers into that regard.
And yet we are not going after. So it's a combination of several factors. Number one, we talked about identity.
Yes.
But let's not forget that identity can be physical. Then identity can also be within the cyberspace. So our digital accountability in Nigeria is almost non-existent. And this is not in any way downplaying the effort by the Ministry of Communication as well as its agencies such as NIDA. I think they are doing a lot of good work. But I think we also need to enhance our capacity. Colonialism as we know it is not just happening within the physical world. It's also happening within the cyberspace. And I think as a country, we need to use our numbers to our favor. I want to see a situation where all the big names are registered in Nigeria. They sign MOUs to respect our laws. This idea about community, what do they even call it? Community laws. So for instance, if I write to Facebook to say this post is violating my personal right, what Facebook would tell me that this, there are community laws, I think that's what they call it, and that if it doesn't violate those community laws, Facebook will not take it down. But that same post can incite violence in Plateau State. People would die out of that violence. So as a country, we should be able to hold Facebook responsible when such things happen.
So which community rules are they playing at? They should come
exactly
down into our own country.
Exactly. So we must enhance digital accountability. And I think we have lessons to learn from the European Union. Because they've put their acts together, they are able to, you've seen instances where they find this organization, and these organizations have been forced to pay. So we must also reach that level of maturity where we're able to invite those companies, and they should take into cognizance the context and our peculiarity as a country, so that every time you approach them, they don't just tell you there are community laws, and as long as this doesn't violate, no, if it violates our law, then you should be able to take it into consideration as well. So again, why I brought this up is it's important to us, for us to realize that in the modern day world, we shouldn't only be looking at our national laws. Geopolitics and issues happening outside Nigeria also have a huge impact on security within Nigeria. And a good example is this digital sort of issues we've mentioned. These guys are able to do that, display this, because our digital accountability in Nigeria is very, very low.
Let me take you on the one that appears to be the latest, the conflict or crisis in Jos Plateau State. Recently, I think the president has already visited, but also some people, they're like, these visits. This crisis has been on for a while. He's visited, other presidents have visited. Why is this such an issue?
I mean, the issues in Plateau State are a microcosm of the issues that are affecting security within Nigeria. And at the center of the issues, I think, is the identity crisis. This idea of settlers and indigenes, this idea of resource-based agitation. It has created a challenge that from time to time sort of emerges. And then if you notice, it's usually during political cycles that you now see these issues kind of come into a fore. So clearly, those who are trying to trigger some form of conflict within Nigeria do understand that microcosm that I've described. They know that the hotbed I call them the tectonic templates. Anyone who has read geography and volcanic, there are two tectonic templates that Nigeria lies on: ethnicity and religion. And if you touch Plateau State, you've touched the two tectonic templates. You've shifted those two and once you shift it, what happens? The volcano erupts. So those who did that killing in Rukuba were actually trying to shift those two tectonic templates.
So it was a deliberate move.
That's my perception. But this is it, Larry. Our intelligence apparatus, to a large extent, is responsible for allowing this to happen. And this is not to say, I know in the past there have been instances where the intelligence apparatus have reported on these things and have made recommendations, but because it wasn't politically convenient to act on their recommendations, nothing was done. So again, I think even in this instance, I am not aware. I don't know if the intelligence apparatus have reported on it, but if they haven't, then the focus of Mr. President should be on them. Task them in very clear terms. Tell me who was behind that attack. What the imperatives: what, when, where, who, and how. That's what every intelligence report should produce. So let Mr. President do that, and then hopefully, once they give him, and he should give him a very short period. We have the Americans; they're already here. So let's put our heads together. Our local intelligence capabilities, the foreign intelligence capabilities. What can we produce so that Mr. President has a good report on his table that tells him who was behind the attack? Not just the pawns, but those who also supported the pawns to go, somebody would have funded the attack. And then it will shock you, Larry, these guys moved on motorbikes. I mean, even if it's 1,000 or 1,000,000 ants that come together, we should be able to know from where did those ants come together to converge. After the attack, where did they go to? How can people on motorbikes disappear, for God's sake?
No, but we have an issue in Nigeria that a lot of the motorbikes don't have...
So I'm not, at this stage, I'm not even interested in the identity.
The license.
At least let's know where they came from and where they went to after the attack. That's what I mean.
Okay.
Again, this is a public space. I don't want to say too much. Okay. But our surveillance capabilities should be able to tell us that. And then
we do have surveillance.
We do. We do. Again, I don't want to say too much.
Okay.
But I can tell you if an election is going to take place, that digital dashboard that I told you, you would see a digital dashboard with all the wards, 8,000, you will see them during the election
for
period.
Politics. Let me take you, the president went there. Some have said good move, that should bring results. But I'm told there's been another attack even
after he left. Yes. And I'm sorry to say, unless we do the right thing, those attacks will continue. It's simple.
What's the right thing?
The right thing is to enhance public security. The enhancement of public security comes in those 6 elements that I mentioned earlier on. We have to be able to detect, and then the last element is we have to be able to prosecute. We're not doing enough of that. The attackers in Rukuba have not been arrested. Before you prosecute, you have to arrest first, yes. So that's very important, because it will send a very strong message to whoever else wants to do something like that we won't tolerate it. For as long as we don't do that, then we're likely to see a continuation of it. And this is a responsibility that cuts across all the tiers of government. Enough of the politics to real security should never go into the realm of politics. We have to have capable public security. The nearest that we have in Nigeria of a capable public security is in Lagos, where all the paraphernalia of good public security exists. That example I gave you, we've trialed it in Lagos, and it's working. We need to be able to do that in Nigeria. We have to be able to detect, we have to be able to punish offenders as they happen. And the beauty of the system, if we set it up, the president has said he's going to install 5,000 cameras.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Enugu has tried it, and I urge you, invite the governor or invite any of his commissioners responsible and let them tell you the challenge that they have. Look, again, we have to look at security from the prism of the whole. You can't just do one and think it will solve the problem. Cameras are good. As a practitioner, I'll tell you they have their purpose, but they are just one out of the several layers that we need to have in security. So I'm hoping that the president is advised rightly to remind him of the fact that we need to approach security from that angle, not just from the angle of installing cameras. To your question on why the Plateau continues to do, over the years, there have been several administrative and judicial commissions that have been set up in Plateau State, several. The Justice Nikki Tubey Commission is one of them. The report, if you have your opportunity to pick that report, pick it. But I would surprise you and shock you that it has never been politically expedient for the political players to implement the recommendations of that report.
And since then, the problem still just gets...
Exactly. The issues, the reasons for the problem are well known to virtually everybody. In fact, I've sat down with a sitting governor. Land administration, as an example. So land grabbing is being peddled as one of the challenges. And I asked His Excellency, I said, Your Excellency, why are you not titling the land? And he told me it's impossible. If he titles the land, there are certain elements within the state that will not allow him to give other elements within the state title to land. They own the land. Either they've bought it or from one way or the other, they've been able to acquire it. But then because it's not politically convenient for certain elements, they won't allow the state government to grant them the title to those lands. So that's the complexity of the challenge in Plateau State.
The more you speak, the more I think we come back to this issue of the national identity, citizenship, and all that. And it seems like it might help, because even when it comes to the issue of who you are, you need to feel a part of. So what is it what can we do?
So, I'm really happy with this question. We just, on the 1st and 2nd of April, we just came out of a conference that my organization, Beacon Security and Intelligence Limited, partnered with another organization founded by General Sali Bala, retired, called WISER. And what we attempted to do at that conference is to congest this issue of identity. We approached it from the point of view of decontextualizing narratives around terminologies and concepts that are used to describe security issues, both in conversations as well as in security operations, because that's the crux of the matter. Sometimes, either knowingly or unknowingly, we use terms that now either stereotype, or the concept of even hate messaging comes up knowingly or unknowingly.
And it contributes to
the security challenges, of course. Think about it. If you issue a statement, so you've deported, let's say, 20 people, and then issuing the statement, and this is a government organization,
yes,
Igbo indigents have been deported. Now, that's like a very blunt statement, quote unquote neutral. But by the use of that word, Igbo indigents, what you've done is now you've labeled all the deportees as Igbos. And what it now happens to the listeners, a lot of Igbos are involved in these challenges. So it's an Igbo problem. Meanwhile, those persons are seen out there as Nigerians, because what is their passport? Green. What does their passport say? Nigeria. So it is a Nigerian problem and not an Igbo problem. The same way, if you use the word Fulani herdsmen or Fulani terrorists, what you've done is, I'm not sure, but the Fulani say their population in Nigeria is about 10 million. So what you've done is you've put that label across 10 million Nigerians. And what you have succeeded in doing is isolating the law-abiding ones among them who are also victims of this challenge. From instead of them now supporting you, all they seek to do is kind of protect themselves, because you've labeled them. And the danger, which takes us to the second part of why we convened the conference, security operations will now be guided by this kind of labeling. When the military is going out for an operation, what they are thinking, Fulani hamlets, Fulani settlements, Igbo. Exactly. And so you see the danger of identity and labeling. I stand up to speak. The first thing that the person says, a Muslim, a Fulani person speaking, he does not remember, this is an expert in a particular field. Whatever I'm going to say is going to be determined by that bias that he has formed in his mind. So that's kind of the danger. And it has an influence in how our policymakers, our government react. Because at the end of the day, they are politicians. They want numbers. If they take certain decisions that the generality of the people feel they are favoring or tilted towards a direction, it will affect their votes. So we need to come back as a people to address that identity question. Ask ourselves in real terms. So that's why the theme of our conference was decontextualizing these issues. And I'm very happy that during the conference, we discussed at length. And of course, we partnered with the National Counterterrorism Center, the Ministry of Information, as well as the Institute of Peace and Conflict Resolution. The output, what we are putting out, is a toolkit to help discussing, especially the media, as well as the security sector organizations, so that when they are coming out with statements, or when anchors in the media houses are discussing, they are fully conscious of some of the words that they use, so that they don't end up instituting this labeling, this stereotyping, this hate messaging. And I think it's important for me to mention this. We invited the ambassador of Rwanda in Nigeria because of what led to the genocide in his country. This is exactly what led to the identity issue. How over time the identity issue now became a issue of discussion. Stereotyping, hate messaging, stigmatization now became a conversation within public space. In fact, a particular media platform in Rwanda started advocating for violence against a particular group. And of course, the result is everyone who studied the genocide, 800,000 to 1 million people were killed over a period of about 100 days. So he spoke to the conference about that. He also, more importantly, told the conference what his government did after the genocide to achieve the enviable position that Rwanda is occupying in Africa. Now, of course, we all know Rwanda is now the gem, as it were, of Africa in terms of what it has been able to achieve over time.
I would like to understand from you, we've talked about what the conference did, but, the issue, if from that conference and maybe from discussions, what is it that government is not doing to bring a sense of oneness? Because it appears when we're talking security, that's the last thing on people's mind.
Yeah, I think government understands the need for a whole of government and a whole of society approach. But unfortunately, it's mounted, but it's not being implemented. So that's part of the challenge. And I mean, let's practicalize what I just said now. You engage with governors. Ask most of the governors, are they aware of the contents of, let's say, the national security strategy, or the contents of the national counterterrorism strategy, or the contents of the national defense policy? I doubt if maybe just a handful of governors will tell you they are aware. How many of them understand the content and then in their budgeting process or their development plan actually extract from that to say whatever we're doing, we're tying it to the provisions of our national counterterrorism strategy? So that's, I think, part of the challenge. We are approaching security as a political tool to achieve certain objectives. We're not approaching security as a national objective. We're not approaching security as the imperative. Again, I take us back to Section 14, subsection 2. We're not approaching security from that pathway. Appointments are being made on the basis of political, expedience, and not necessarily on the basis of competence. Let's use America as an example. America is currently at war with Iran. I challenge anyone to tell me how many times have you seen the leadership of the American national security apparatus coming on air to speak about the war? It's politicians that are having that conversation. What are the leadership of the security sector doing? They are busy implementing the policies that the politicians have decided. That's how security should be. We should have competent people appointed in security sector leadership who are not in any way affiliated with politics and that are just implementing what our national security imperatives are. And so it takes me even back to the beginning. What are our national security imperatives? If we are not approaching the national security apparatus in the manner it should be, then the question now arises, what are our national security imperatives?
Because of time, okay. I would like you to take just, I think, 2 questions before I forget. What this government has been trying to do, push as one of the solutions to help, is the issue of state police. What's your take on the effort so far, and what that could that help?
So it could, but we have to first appreciate the risk, and thankfully we've sat down as a group, we've identified the risk, and so we must mitigate the risk before we push forward. One part of the risk is this: we've not really appreciated the meaning of policing. In conversations, you hear we want to create state police.
Yes.
You hear we want to create state policing. They are 2 different things.
Okay.
First, as a country, we need to define and appreciate the difference between state police and state policing. We already have state policing.
Yes.
Yes, we already have state policing because almost all the states have some level of security structures that they've implemented. In fact, even at the family level, when you say your kids don't do X, don't do Y, that's a policing instrument. We've created, under the community policing structures, we've got state policing elements already in place. But state police to the average Nigerian politician, when he speaks of state police, he wants to recreate the Nigerian police force at the state level. Yes. So we need to be able to understand that. And you see the danger. If the current structure of the Nigerian police force, if you recreate it in 36 states, imagine the challenges we have with the police at the moment. Then you now come and create 36 of such structures. And so instead of dealing with one federal challenge, you are now dealing with, as it were, 37, the federal, and then the 36 state plus Abuja, 38 challenges at the moment. So we need to be able to first make that difference between the two, and then more importantly, the risk that I spoke about. And there are political risks, there are economic risks, there are social risks, and then there are institutional risks. So we need to, and my advice to Mr. President is to set up a committee of relevant eco-space individuals, stakeholders, including risk managers, to now work together. The attempt by the Inspector General of Police is a welcome development, but there are only one element within the eco-space that is interested in this matter. So I think it should be expanded so that we have key players to now put together, first identify the risk, which we've done, and then more importantly, put in place mitigation measures against those risks. And I think we should not be in a hurry. I kind of realize why this administration is in a hurry, because as you know, the parliament has a lifespan. Yes. If they don't do it now, then they have to start the process in the 11th assembly. But we shouldn't be in a hurry. This matter is too important to be done in a hurry.
Very quickly, we're having rising issues of insecurity, and at the same time, we're going into the political elections. Very briefly, what is your advice going as we do right now?
This advice I gave about appreciating the risk. And luckily, we had a conference, I think 2 weeks ago, the Alumni Association of ANIS, National Nigeria Institute of Security, the SSS, Institute of Security. Yes. They invited the chairman of INEC. I was there. I gave a speech, and the array of experts that they identified all the challenges, all the risks associated with the elections and security. But what personally I advise the INEC chair is his risk management department, the INEC risk management department. And thankfully, there are two elements. Yeah. There's the Electoral Institute that looks at operational risk, and then there's a department within INEC that also look at risk. But the capacity of those two would have to be improved. From my engagement with them, I realized they need a lot of engagement. So it's very important for the INEC chair to enhance the capacity of those two organizations. And there are private sector players. As an example, I'm a member of the Risk Management Society of Nigeria, a group of experts in risk management. We can support that process. I'm sure if the president of that association and the vice president is listening to me, I can speak on our behalf. We can probably even pro bono support that process, but we need to be brought in through a pathway to find ways to support it. But
do you see this election being possible with this?
If we don't manage the risk, one risk I'll tell you is this is the identity of the chairman himself. A section of this country has complained about his person because of his antecedents, and we've not managed that risk. It's manageable. Okay. I must say it's manageable. So this is the beauty of risk management. Identify evaluate, and then mitigate. Now, we are good in identifying, and sometimes we just, like the proverbial ostrich, we dig our heads into the sand and think the problem would solve itself. Disappear. No, we need to do in a very constructive way, like modern risk management has provided for us, move forward in addressing those risks. And I would strongly urge the president to look more closely at risk management in modern day societies. It's become embedded as a part of government function. In most places, if you're able to identify the risk, then it will take you to controlling the risk, mitigating the risk.
All right, so thank you very much, Dr. Adamu, for your time and for helping us understand a little bit better what the situation is. Our prayer is that going forward, some of the suggestions you've put forward will be taken and we'll see a safer society. Thank you very much.
My pleasure, Larry. I'm a believer of prayer, but I also think it's more important to act. The Germans would say trust is good, but control is better. Let us act. Let us pray, but let us act. All the issues we've spoken about regarding accountability, we need to approach them frontally.
And act on them. Thank you very much. It is noble to strive for economic growth and all the elements that make for a thriving society. But let us remember, the true foundation of development is built on security, peace, and justice. Without these pillars, progress cannot stand. We'd love to hear your reflections on tonight's conversation. Join the discussion by sharing your views on our social media platforms or send us an email. You can write in and have your say as we continue the dialogue online. And if you missed any part of tonight's program or would like to revisit past episodes, head over to our YouTube channel. Simply search Newsnight, click on the playlist, and explore to your convenience. Thank you for spending your time with us. Stay safe and goodbye.